What's going on, guys? Welcome back to NolanTCG, and we are back here today for another deck profile, and this time it's for Paleo Frog. So this is a different build to the one we put up a few weeks ago where we mixed it in with Eldritch. This is a pure Paleo Frog list, so if that is your style, this is probably the best way to go. I do much prefer playing like Paleo Frog. I understand it like a whole lot more, and I don't have to worry about resource management and stuff like that as much, because I just really understand the core concept of how this deck works and functions, and this is probably the build that I prefer to be playing overall. Of course, we did receive the new Paleo Link monster in Lightning Overdrive. We will discuss that later when we do get to it. However, let's get into the deck profile for this one. But as always, before we do get started, please remember to drop down below and hit the subscribe button if you are new here, because we are always happy to have new people to the channel. And let's get on into this deck profile. Okay, so starting us off, as always, we do have the 3 copies of Swap Frog, nice ulti boy himself. Overall, you draw this card, hopefully you win duel, he resolve, he bounce back, he go again. Card's very, very good. Then next off we have Professor Frog. Hopefully Professor Frog is attacked in the battle phase and he will grant you place. That is the degree that Professor Frog has. Next off after that we've got the Ronin Toden. Just banishes your other frogs, bring him back, gives you fodder for your Link 2 plays, your Rank 2 plays and your Link climbing, stuff like that. Overall, this is your standard frog line. You always just play 3-3-2. Next off we've got the spells, so we're not playing any monster-based hand traps. We do have though 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity. Starting us off, you don't really need to be playing Extrav anymore that you can get Prosperity. Does really take away the risk of you like losing all of your Totally Awesomes on one go, because when that does happen, you are in a very bad position. You are essentially just trying to like put your opponent into a position where you can get into an access code and kill them. So yeah, 3 copies of Prosperity just makes the deck much better. And we are playing the 1 copy of Pot of Duality. I don't normally play 1 copy of Duality in the deck, however I did feel as though going with that extra little bit of consistency, considering the Prosperity only gets you the 1 card as opposed to the 2 that Extrav would give you, I felt the Prosperity was probably a solid option. After that, we do play 1 more spell. I did consider playing this, playing Imperial Order over this, but going to a 5 spell count, I didn't feel super comfortable playing Imperial Order, even though it's not like a massive detriment. But it is 1 copy of Scapegoat. I, for one, get really, really annoyed whenever I watch like a Paleo profile, and whoever's doing it is like, 1 copy of Scapegoat. This card is full combo. You can't play this deck relying around getting to Scapegoat and winning. You do need to like know how to play this deck outside of that. The 1 Scapegoat does let you go for game when you like do draw it, and that is always good. However, like relying around the Scapegoat to win is a bad mentality to have with this deck. So don't get into like constantly being like, man, I need to resolve this Scapegoat to win right now. Like you need to learn to manage your resources and play other ways. So that's my logic. I am playing it in this list. I would consider cutting it for Imperial Order if I was. I'd probably side deck Imperial Order and switch it for the Scapegoat as I go along. Next off though, that is it for the spells. So we're going to get into our traps now. I've got, of course, 3 copies of Trap Trick starting us off. Just toolboxes out the entire trap line, so you can't really say no to playing this. Then for our Paleos, we're playing 3 copies of Candina. Gets those Book of Moons off and stops your opponent from Link summoning, of course. 3 copies of Dynamiscus to remove those pesky problem cards. And 3 copies of the card that is still not a super rare, Paleozoic Olenoides. It's overall just there. This is your primary spell and trap removal for the deck. It's always good to have an archetypal spell and trap removal card, just to get rid of pesky things like Mystic Mine. Of course, Mystic Mine is something you can consider playing in this deck. However, because it's more like monster-based in your control, you don't really necessarily need to be playing Mystic Mine in this deck. Next off, we have some more like basic trap cards. This is the 1 hand trap, I guess, we're playing. That is 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. It can be set off Trap Trick, which is the reason we've gone with this. Of course, when you're going first, you will need to make side deck cuts and put in like, when you're going second, sorry, put in like monster-based hand traps that can definitely stop your opponent. I would consider like switching this out in that situation for stuff like the Mirror, things like that. You can always trim down on your spell lineup and other traps though to bring in hand traps as well. Next off, we have 3 copies of Ice Dragon's Prison. So your Ice Dragon's Prison, of course, like searchable again off Trap Trick. This card is a power card and just beats so many decks right now, especially Dragon Link. This card is just a win button when you flip it face up. Then we get into our counter traps. So of course this card stuff can't be set off Trap Trick, but we are playing the 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. Yeah, says no to pretty much everything. We had a discussion the other day about if you could play 40 cards in a deck, what would you play? I was like, I'd play 40 Solemn Judgment because you can never lose the game. You can only go to 1 life point and then it rounds up. I'm on a tangent here in the middle of a deck profile, but that's just what we're discussing. And then I realized my opponent withdraw a 6th card for turn. and you'd just lose because you can't stop all 6 cards. Hopefully you just stop the normal summon though, and you're in good a situation, but you will eventually lose the resource game with 40 Solemn Judgments. That is just how maths works. And that's my tangent. So next up, we've got 2 copies of Solemn Strike after that. Of course, Solemn Strike, another one of the Solemn Brigade. You can consider playing this at 3. I just kind of felt that playing 5 of the counter traps was a good ratio. Next off, we're playing 2 copies of Warning Point after that, though. So I really actually like Warning Point. It does just, like, stop the opponent from playing in certain decks where you can just, like, prank kids. They slap the monster on board, you just hit it, and then it just can't be used for anything, and hopefully that just kind of shuts their turn down from that point. And, yeah, the fact that we're playing... Well, the reason why we're playing this at 2, of course, is so that you can set it off Trap Trick if you do need to go that route. And then the last card of the deck, it's 2 copies of Crackdown. Big thing is for the Salamangrate matchup, where you just... Opponent puts down a Salamangrate, take it. That's just a big thing at my locals. It actually does stop a lot of decks that go around my locals, so I always like to play Crackdown whenever I'm playing Paleo. Okay, next off we have the extra deck, and of course, starting us off, we have 3 copies of Totally Awesome, because this card is totally awesome. Yeah, overall, like, you make this, it makes the whole deck go around, like, it's pretty logical. It negates, it extends, it does kind of everything you need to do, and it just, like, gets your resources back, of course. Next off, after that, 2 copies of Paleozoic Opabenia. Of course, you don't need to play this at 2, like, it's not super necessary at 2. This is a pros build, though, so it is a card you can just get rid of as you're prosperating away a lot of things. Just gives you consistency, adds traps. You can really toolbox, like, the certain things in your deck, and you can activate them from hand, of course. After that, we play 1 copy of Paleozoic Anomalocaris. Same situation as the Opabenia. If you want to bump this to 2, and then you can prosper them away, it doesn't really matter. I just wanted to play as much, like, kind of tech and variance in my extra deck as possible. Card just gets you removal, gets you more trap cards, it's fine. Then after that, we have, of course, 1 copy of Skycav Centuria. Card is basically used to out a lot of things. It can go through Dragoon, which is always good if your opponent, like, has used their negate. If you can get to a Skycav Centuria, you just declare the attack, damage step, you detach the material, bounce the card. It doesn't target, it's just a simple out for that. And then we have 1 copy of Cat Shark if we need to make our Paleozoic, or our Anomalocaris, or our Totally Awesome really big to get over some problem cards. Then we get into our Link line, so we have the 1 copy of Link Spider, of course. It's for turning your Paleozoics into Link monsters to then make them effect monsters, so that you can go into other Link plays. Something you can definitely consider is playing 2 copies of Link Spider. It can come up that you need it in multiple. Next off, we have the controversial card. It's 1 copy of Paleozoic Cambrosta. I don't like this card at all. If you watch the pack opening when we opened this, I did rip one and then realized that I had, like, the secret rare straight after it. That's how much, like, this annoyed me. I completely ignored that I had a Diviner right behind it. Overall, it's simply the fact that the card says 2 Paleozoic monsters. If it said 2 level 2 monsters, this card would be great, or 2 level 2/rank 2. It'd be fantastic. But the fact that it says Paleo is a problem. I do feel as though it does have, if you're playing, like, a very heavy Paleo line in your deck, this does have more applications where you can play the one that brings back the banish pile. But when you link into this, it's going to banish your material, and I just feel as though that's a big problem. Also requires you to, like, send the set card to get the card that you need from deck. Yes, you can send a Paleo card to then be able to get that resource back later, which is the reason why I'm playing this. Like, I did strongly consider just not playing this at all, but that is the only application in which I liked this card. It's simply the fact that it requires 2 Paleo monsters is my problem, because you're going to lose out on those resources, and the resource game in this deck is something you really need to stay on top of. And that's my rant about Paleozoic Cambrosta. After that, though, we have our first Water Link 2, or our only really Water Link 2. It's Coral Anemone. It does lock you to waters, which is a bit of a problem. Like, you're not going to link climb through this. This is typically here if you're trying to, like, set up and do certain things. Then for our link climbing cards, we have 1 copy of Nightmare Phoenix. Can get you that back row. Really, when you're trying to climb for game, it can just get rid of a pesky card. 1 copy of Unicorn. Again, same thing. When you link climbing through to your access code talker, just gets rid of a pesky card. And then 1 copy of access code talker. This is just primarily what pushes through for massive damage. So this is 14 cards. If you're not going to consider playing something like Waking the Dragon in your side deck, you can just play another card that has Toolbox. However, I do have a Waking the Dragon target. I'm playing 1 copy of Dragoon. This can realistically be any Waking the Dragon target, though. In game 1, I don't have a main deck Waking the Dragon, so this can be a prosp target. It will just immediately get prosped out. However, in games 2 and 3, I do like to play the 1 copy of Waking the Dragon in the main deck. just so that if your opponent has a Harpies or they have a Lightning Storm, you can Trap Trick into it, and then hopefully it ruins their day. But that will wrap us up here for the deck profile for this one. So as always, if you do have any recommendations or things you would change, do make sure to comment them down below. But as always, I've been Ben from NolanTCG, and have a good afternoon, everybody.